appreciate everybody coming out. In the last 8 years that I've had the privilege to serve as mayor, one of the things I'm proudest of is the number of times I've been able to call gatherings like this together and make announcements about great things happening all over our city. And there are a lot of great things happening in our city, from earning record levels of investment, attracting more young professionals to live in Louisville, and establishing a global reputation as a city of compassion. Those successes and many, many others are the product of an immense amount of hard work from you all and people all over our city that we've done this work together. And it's provided very solid momentum as we work to build a brighter and better future for the people of Louisville. I wish we were here today to talk about another great example of that momentum. Instead, we have to talk about the fact that the very work that we're so proud of is under threat. We are at a crossroads. So the question at hand, the city overall is booming. And are we going to keep moving forward, or are we going to slow down? As I outlined last week, because of the changes the Kentucky retirement system made in the assumption of our pension funds' return on investment, our city faces an additional pension obligation of $20 million this coming fiscal year. It starts July 1st. That's made up of $10 million that we're handling this year in fiscal year 19 and $10 million in this next fiscal year. Add to that increased health care costs and slower than expected revenue growth, and the budget gap we're facing is $35 million for fiscal year 20. And that gap will grow to $65 million by 2023 because of the additional $10 million per year required by the Kentucky pension system. This problem is not something that the Metro Council or I created, the pension problem. Metro government has paid its pension bill to the Kentucky retirement system 100% of the time, every year, as mandated by Kentucky state statute. And our city employee pension system, CERS, is not in crisis, unlike several of the other retirement systems in the state. Now let me be clear, I appreciate the state's attempt to position our pension systems to be structurally sound. But those discussions and actions fall short of addressing the revenue needs of local governments. And Frankfort has not provided us the tools and flexibility we need to deal with the obligations they're imposing on us. We're required by law to pay whatever dollar amount the retirement board sets as our pension obligation, and we're required to balance our city budget every year. So that leaves us facing some serious and material deficits, even though our economy is healthy and it's growing. And it leaves us with a difficult choice: make devastating cuts to critical city services or secure new revenues. So let's talk about the potential cuts first. The kind of cuts this challenge will require aren't abstract revisions, just numbers on a column or a government spreadsheet. These cuts would impact the lives of people all across our city. That's because my administration has spent the last 8 years working to run a leaner and more efficient operation. That approach is one of the values that I brought to the mayor's office, I would humbly submit, from the 30 years I spent in business, including starting and building a global company that was recognized for excellence. I know how to build budgets. I know how to cut. I know how to grow revenue. And my team and I have been applying those skills over these past 8 years. And while we've done that, we've worked with our business community to add 80,000 jobs, open 2,700 new businesses, continue to be the economic engine of this Commonwealth. We've addressed public health and public safety challenges like opioids, hepatitis A, violent crime, all of which emerged as crises in recent years and are now moving in the right direction. We've established successful programs like Summer Works that help thousands of young people connect with jobs, careers, and hope. We post our efficiency goals and progress online through LouisStat, the nationally recognized performance improvement system that we created. And I wanted to create it from day one because I said if we ever have to ask the people of Louisville for more money, I want them to be able to see online what we've been doing to make this government more efficient. Louisstat has helped us improve performance and find efficiencies like helping Public Works and Assets cut injury rates in half, which reduces lost work time, reduces our insurance costs, cutting the repair time of Metro vehicles by 15 days, a 29% improvement, helping EMS cut turnaround time in hospitals by 10 minutes from 40 to 30, which nets an additional 40 hours per day for ambulance coverage on our streets, and many, many more examples. What's the outside world say? Flagship rating agencies like Fitch, S&P, and Moody's have given Metro government some of the highest ratings for financial stewardship. And while we've increased the number of police officers on our streets since 2011, we've kept the number of Metro government employees flat while growing revenue, while growing population at around 4,015 fantastic employees I'm proud to serve alongside of. In that same time, we've seen an increase in the number of calls and the number of calls for service, including 911. We're getting about 90,000 more calls for service per year. But we've found efficiencies that enable us to handle more calls and serve more citizens with basically the same number of employees that we had 8 years ago. Since 2011, we looked at others, there's surplus property that we could sell. We've collected $23 million by selling surplus vehicles and other property. We've introduced processes to step up overdue fee collections, going from about $540,000 in civil penalty collections in FY11 to an estimated $3.6 million in FY19. We created the whole concept around One Water, a cost savings initiative for Louisville Water and MSD, allowing them to share building space, equipment, facilities, etc. In between savings and new revenue, One Water has provided or produced a combined $13 million per year in benefits, and that will continue to grow every year. And we did all that while balancing a $25 million structural budget deficit in 2012. The point is that we will always work to improve, constantly improve. My team and I have demonstrated that we know how to build effective and balanced budgets in trying times. The data shows that we're already a lean and efficient operation with multiple third-party validations. Benchmarks bear that out as well. Annually, we analyze the financial reports of our 19 peer cities to make sure that we're not getting fat in any of our service areas. Of our 19 peer cities, and this isn't necessarily a good thing, Louisville has the fourth fewest city government employees per capita. St. Louis has one city employee for every 46 citizens. Nashville has one employee for every 74 citizens. In Louisville, we average one government employee for every 123 citizens. In other words, we're delivering our city services with far fewer employees per capita than 15 of our 19 peer cities. Another sign of a lean operation effectively serving more citizens with fewer people. So I share all this to say that our 8 years of dedication of creating efficiency means that there are no easy or painless or abstract cuts to make, and certainly not enough to erase a $65 million deficit that we'll have on us in FY23 if we don't do anything. And the kind of cuts we potentially face will be specific, and they'll be painful, and they'll be damaging for people in every neighborhood across our city. Let's think about the kind of operation we are. Government is a service business, and service businesses are made up, or the cost of service businesses are made up of people who deliver those services. Personnel costs make up 72% of our general fund budget, about $485 million. And most of our personnel, about 2/3, work in public safety. And that means that there's no practical way to address a $65 million shortfall without impacting public safety. Why? Because that's where the money is. So let's talk about some of these potential reductions. Reducing our police force by 100 people this year and 250 people over 4 years. When you take a look at the whole 4-year budget, taking 3 ambulances off our street, closing 4 fire stations, closing a health clinic, closing 5 library branches permanently, and closing every branch on Sunday, and reducing all branches to 1 shift, shutting down 4 community centers and 6 neighborhood places, closing 4 public swimming pools, which would leave only 1 for the entire city, zeroing out funding for Brightside, for the Bell Louisville, for the Center for Neighborhoods, eliminating all external agency funds to nonprofits that support social services, community ministries, and the arts. That's what we're facing. And that's just the start. We're talking about cuts to vital services and programs that have saved and transformed lives and encompass the soul of our city and the message that we send to the world about who we are and what we stand for. Among the facilities that might close, if these cuts go, if the council does not decide to raise revenue, is the Wilderness Road Senior Center. And we've got some folks who've come here to remind us how important the center is to them and to many others. I'd like to recognize Alberta Thompson, Donna Estes, and Roger Bowling over here. It's faces like these is what we're talking about, folks. They're regulars at Wilderness Road. They get their exercise there. They play cards there. They build fellowship there. And they volunteer to help our community. 18 years. No small feat. So thank you all so much for joining us here today. The cuts that we're talking about could also end our ability to support one of the real gems in this country that happens to have its national headquarters here, and that's the Family Scholar House. That would mean fewer opportunities for people like Tiffany Fitzpatrick. Tiffany and her son Princeton are with us here today. Come on, stand up and let's see that good-looking guy. Tiffany and Princeton live at Family Scholar House now. Since she's first connected with Family Scholar House 2 years ago, she's earned her associate's degree, and she's on track to graduate from U of L in 2020 with a bachelor's in marketing. The amazing thing about the Family Scholar House is there's hundreds and thousands of stories like Tiffany's and Princeton's. What a shame it would have to be to say, sorry, you don't matter anymore. These cuts we're facing would negatively impact the years of work by hundreds of thousands of people across our city to make Louisville a city where every child in every neighborhood has the chance to realize their full human potential. That's what we call compassion in our city. That would be a terrible mistake, one that would cost us years, if not generations, of progress and development that we've all worked so hard to get to this point. So that's option one. Some people are mad at me for putting faces and numbers behind these potential cuts. That's my job. We're either going to cut or we're going to raise revenue or some combination thereof. But people have got to understand it's going to impact us and impact our community. So option one, cuts off of an already lean budget. Option two is raising new revenue. So my team and I and our partners on the Metro Council have been studying this challenge from all sides for well over a year. And we've been talking about it along the way. You saw the video that we played here earlier. You're hearing some people saying this is a big surprise to them. So we just want to present the facts. Facts are still important. In September 2017, the council passed a resolution that acknowledged the pension problem and urged for the separation of the local pension system from the state's pension system. Folks, we've been talking about this a long time. I called for pension reform in my 2018 and 2019 State of the City addresses. Metro Government CFO Daniel Frocht and his team have briefed the Metro Council on this many times in the last 18 months. And to quickly bring the 8 new Metro Council members up to speed, my team and I met with each of them in their first week, and these members were briefed on this challenge in their December Metro Council orientation by the Council and in January individual meetings. We began addressing this shortfall in the budget I presented last April. In the current fiscal year, FY19, We took responsible action, like reducing our payroll by 49 positions through attrition, implemented a hiring frost, only approving vacant positions and reclassifications if they met certain essential function criteria, and limited discretionary spending on travel, training, technology, office supplies, subscriptions, and assigned vehicles. And with all that, we will find ourselves in a $65 million budget hole in FY23. And we're looking out till FY23 because we know the obligations are going to be coming in from the pension system until FY23. To just address this as a one-year problem would be a real abdication of duty. So the vast majority of this is due to the pension bill, and we have to find our way out. So that's what we're going to do. My team and I, in consultation with our partners on the council, have created a plan that represents the best option for our city's future, given the fact that by law, our options for raising the revenue we need are extremely limited by the state. So I'm submitting to Metro Council a plan that will resolve the city's pension-related budget gap for the coming year and beyond, assuming our country doesn't go into some kind of big recession. You get to a point in a budget where further reductions cut into muscle, and I believe that is where we are. We can spare our city and our citizens the damage of the cuts we'll be otherwise forced to make through a reasonable, phased-in increase in our city's insurance premium taxes. The insurance premium tax is a tax on the amount of premiums written by insurance companies doing business with Metro. In insurance terms, this affects home insurance, life insurance, marine, and miscellaneous types of insurance such as malpractice, title insurance, and umbrella coverage. This proposal will not affect automobile insurance premiums because of equity concerns that we and our partners on the council share about how an increase in auto insurance rates would regressively impact people who are struggling economically. Our plan calls for increasing the tax rates on the 5 other types of insurance premiums outside of auto from their current 5% to 12.5% in FY20 and 21, 13.5% in FY22, and 15% in FY23 to meet each year's increasing pension obligation. The impact on each individual family varies, obviously, depending on how much that they're paying for insurance coverage and how much insurance they carry. But let's have an example. People who carry insurance for their boat or who buy medical malpractice coverage will pay more than people who are only insuring their home. Over time through FY23, the average family's home insurance rate will increase by about $12 or $13 a month, or around 40 cents per day. That would be the contribution for us to solve this problem. We selected this approach by using the insurance premium taxes because the other tax options that we have that are very limited do not produce either adequate revenue or they can't be implemented in enough time to address our need. So on balance, we feel like this is our best way forward because if we don't raise revenue, the damaging cuts we'll be forced to make in services will have an even greater negative impact on our citizens and our city's momentum, both economically and with public safety, and that is unacceptable. The suggested approach will cover our projected pension budget expenses, and the language of the ordinance will dedicate all of the money raised from this increase to meet pension expenses. Now, I suggest this approach reluctantly. My team and I have managed difficult budget challenges these past 8 years without having to ask for a tax increase. But this mandate from the Kentucky retirement system is out of our control. We have to respond by law. And as we think about this and talk about this in the community over the coming weeks, I think one of the questions that this discussion raises is, what kind of city do we want to be? Do we want to be a bare-bones city that's barely struggling to get by? Or do we want to be a flourishing city with amenities that growing businesses and interesting people, and top talent demand. Because that's who we're competing with, folks. Thriving cities around the country have proven that reasonable, thoughtfully implemented revenue increases don't inhibit economic growth. In fact, they often fuel economic growth. Indianapolis, Austin, Tampa, Denver, and many others have raised revenue far beyond their operating budgets and invested in themselves as ways to create prosperity and opportunity to improve infrastructure, transportation, affordable housing, and more. These are cities that we compete with for talent and jobs every day. So these investments that they're doing are far beyond anything that we're talking about just to keep up with our operating demands. That's what our best competitors are doing. Some history. The last time Louisville increased taxes at all was in the early 1980s, when it increased the insurance premium tax rate from 2.5% to 5%. Since the early 1980s. Jefferson County, before merger, last increased taxes about 3 decades ago, when it began collecting an insurance premium tax after the state authorized counties to collect. And merged government has never increased taxes. Some of our suburban cities with the insurance premium tax already charge 10%. We're at 5%. Here's the bottom line. All of us up here wish this weren't necessary, but it absolutely is. And as mayor, I can tell you I'm in the reality business. And the reality is this is the best, least painful option open to us from an extremely short list of choices. So it's my duty to submit the budget proposal to the Metro Council, and it's their duty to review those proposals, listen to the voices of the people of Louisville, and cast a vote that's in the best interest of their district and the city. The Metro Council has the power to solve this challenge by passing the proposal that I'm submitting, along with my Metro Council partners and initial co-sponsors. The initial co-sponsors are President David James, Councilman Bill Hollander, Councilman Pat Mulvihill, Councilwoman Barbara Sexton Smith, and Councilman Marcus Winkler. I really appreciate the courage and leadership these folks have shown. The council has until March 21st, 5 weeks from now, to vote on the insurance premium tax in order for it to go into effect at the beginning of our July 1st fiscal year. Now look, businesses and families all across our city make critical financial decisions in far less time than 5 weeks, and I'm confident our council can as well. Our citizens and our council have known generally about this challenge for quite some time, and I appreciate those on the council who have been working with my team and me in a constructive fashion with no political posturing. And unfortunately, you're starting to see too much of that. And when we see political posturing, what I ask of each and every one of y'all is demand facts, and if you're against something, be for something else, and be specific. Because this is not, I've had some people say, I don't want to raise taxes, and I don't want to cut services. It's not going to work that way. That is not what a responsible elected official will say. So, to the citizens of Louisville, you all have heard from me now. Now it's time for your elected representatives to hear from you. So I ask everybody in Louisville to review the details of this proposal. It's online at louisvilleki.gov/budgetfy1920. If your council person is not listed on that page as a co-sponsor of this ordinance, contact them and ask them to support this critical measure. And if not, why not? And ask them what senior center they want to close, what family scholar house they want to close, what library they want to close, how many police officers to lay off, how to hurt our cure violence program. Ask them to put a name with each one of their cuts that they might be posturing for. But don't let them just say, I'm against raising taxes. It's not that simple. You got to be for one or the other or some combination thereof. But demand accountability. I realize this is not an easy choice, but under the circumstances, it's a pretty clear one. Do we keep the momentum of our city moving forward or fall back? If we choose cuts as a way to address this challenge, in addition to the human cost It will send a message to our business community and our competitor cities that while the rest of the world is speeding up, Louisville's slowing down. We need to send a different message. The same message that we've been crafting and communicating for the last 8 years, that in Louisville we believe in ourselves, we believe in each other, and we believe in our future. And sometimes when you believe in something, it means you have to fight for it, and it means you have to invest in it. That's the position we're in. Through no fault of our own, we have to fight for the future of our city and invest in the future of our city. That's what we're going to do. That's what I'm asking the Metro Council to do. And that's what I'm asking the people of Louisville to do. Join us. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming out today. We've been joined on the podium by our Metro Council co-sponsors. So to share or start sharing the Metro Council perspective, I'll turn it over to Metro Council President David James. President James.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to echo a little bit about what the mayor just talked about. It's not our desire to raise revenue, raise taxes on the citizens of this community, but we've been handed something that we have to deal with. And for those of us that say, well, I want to maintain my police service, I want to maintain my fire service, I want to maintain all of those things that we have in our city, and I don't want to raise taxes, and I don't want to make any cuts, that's impossible. And so that's why myself, Councilman Hollander, Councilman Mulvihill, Councilman Marcus Winkler, Councilwoman Barbara Sexton-Smith have sponsored this ordinance. And it allows our city to move forward without going backwards. We have worked for the last 8 years under the mayor's administration to move our city forward. And I think we've been making great strides. And to not do this means we're going to be going backwards. So it brings no pleasure to do it, but it also brings no pleasure to not do it. The number one responsibility of a government is the safety of its citizens. And the kind of cuts that we will have to make if we don't do this puts our citizens in danger, in jeopardy. And so what I would say to you moving forward from this point is that next week the ordinance will be filed on Monday. From that point, I will assign it to a committee. The committee that I'm going to assign it to is the Budget Committee. Councilman Hollander has the dubious task of making sure that this works out. No pressure at all. He's up for the challenge. That's why he's the budget chair. From that moment on, we have until March the 21st, it's a Thursday, it's a council meeting day, to pass this ordinance. And that is because 100 days from the day that it goes into effect, the city is required to send a letter to the insurance commissioner for the state of Kentucky saying this is our plan and this is what we intend to do. So we have a short period of time to get work done. And how we get that done, I'm going to turn over to Councilman Hollander.
Thank you for the opportunity, President James. We've been discussing the devastating effects of the increased pension costs since 2017 when the Kentucky Retirement System Board changed the assumptions and led to these new costs. And we've been saying simply and repeatedly that we can't meet this new obligation without new revenue. The communications that we've had in the last few weeks, particularly with 8 new council members, have been among the most collaborative that I've seen since I've been on Metro Council 4 years ago. There have been briefings with every single member. Everyone has had an opportunity to say what they would do. And I would really encourage them to continue to do that, because I want to echo something that the mayor just said. We've heard some people say, we can do this without raising revenue and without cutting services. That's not true. And if people think that we can do this by cutting services that are acceptable to the community, then it is incumbent on any elected official to tell us exactly what service you would cut. And if you can't say that, then you need to say that we need to raise new revenue. The kind of service cuts that we need to implement if we do not raise revenue would ripple throughout the community and would seriously set us back for many years to come. We would be on a downward spiral as a community. That's not good policy, and that's not acceptable for the people that we serve. We'll continue the discussions in a public way beginning tomorrow at the Budget Committee at 4:30 when CFO Fracht will be here to talk about our outlook, where we are this year, which is important as part of the discussion for fiscal year 20, and also the outlook for fiscal year 20 itself. And then we'll be formally introducing the ordinance on next Monday. It will have first reading at the council meeting, the following council meeting. It will be discussed at multiple Metro Council meetings and Budget Committee meetings over the next month. We'll be announcing the schedule for those meetings in the next few days. I would just encourage everyone in the community to get involved in discussions. There'll be many discussions at Metro Council gatherings throughout the community. Many of our members are scheduling those gatherings. Get involved in those discussions and listen to us on the Metro Council. And be sure to ask your Metro Council member who says we can do this without cuts, how you would solve this problem. And if they say, well, there are cuts that are acceptable, make sure you know exactly what those cuts are in detail. Thank you very much.
We are in District 4, so that means we'd like to hear from Councilwoman Barbara Sexton Smith.
These are incredibly difficult times, and each and every elected official that stands on this stage or sits in this audience or is watching or listening from afar knows our #1 top priority is public safety. And that goes beyond the fine men and women of LMPD, and it goes beyond Louisville Fire and Rescue and EMS and corrections, and it's almost every department, because every employee that works for Metro Louisville is committed to public safety and making sure they do their jobs safely. We've heard a lot about putting a face on the possibility of this challenge before us. I want to name some faces that haven't been mentioned yet. So we've heard about a young mom and a small child who may not have her opportunity to live and be educated at Family Scholar House. I've not met her yet. I don't know if anyone lives in her household with her or not, but if they do, they will be gravely impacted if this happens to her. Then we've heard Mayor Fisher say that 72% of our operating cost is related to labor cost and those benefits and compensation for all the wonderful, fine men and women that serve in all the different Metro departments. I don't know who lives in their houses with them. I don't know if anyone does. My best guess is if 300 employees were no longer going to be employed, there's going to be a multiplying effect of the devastating impact on those households and those families and those children. And many of those families are going to have aunts or uncles or grandparents living in those houses, because that's the reality that we live in today. So, colleagues, this is going to take a lot of political will, and more importantly, it's going to take courage. It's going to take courage, and it's going to take our time on Metro Council to make sure we do what we were elected to do, and that is to bring forth sound financial leadership and management of expenses and revenue. And Mayor Fisher has laid out with his team a plan that we can all work with. So when you want to offer cuts and say we can do this without cuts, or you want to cut things and you don't want to raise taxes, then join us. Help us understand what we can do if it's something other than the plan that Mayor Fisher has put forth. And I am proud to co-sponsor this ordinance as it stands today, along with my colleagues. So Mayor Fisher, thank you for your great leadership, your willpower, and your courage to keep us moving forward together.
Thank you. Okay, a lot of folks stand up here. There's a few members of the media up here, so we'll take 2 or 3 questions from the media, and then we can do individual ones later if you like. Yes, sir.
You were talking about the discussions that have been going on with your team. Since the city has known about this since 2017, why are we now in 2019 having our first public conversations about a tax increase?
Well, the amount of the tax increase in obligations was phased in last, I guess it was in April. Is that right, Daniel? And so we immediately started signaling that in my state of with my budget address. It came 2 weeks after that, and then I've been talking about it ever since then. So now is the time with this FY20 budget coming up that we need to go. Normally I produce a budget in April, so we're 90 days ahead of that particular cycle right now. So and we also had 8 new Metro Council members coming on board just this past January. So we've calendared this out from the day that we knew about it so that we could responsibly discuss it with the people that are going to be making the votes on it.
Following up on that question, what would you say to critics who say we should have been talking about like the specific revenue raising options for like the past 6-7 months since your last budget?
Are these the same people that said they didn't know about the problem, or is this another group of people? Okay. I think, look, we've got the budget coming up here soon. We've got 5 weeks. We really only have one option, and that's the insurance premium tax option when you talk about what the council controls in the time that we have to do that. So we've laid out in detail last week how it would impact both the $35 million budget for this next year, or excuse me, $35 million worth of cuts, and $65 million through FY23. You know, look, families and businesses make these kind of decisions all the time, so I'm not sure what that would have done. People have had plenty of notice. So, and you know, people are kind of wanting to run from this to a certain degree. Some people got angry with me for putting the cuts out there and putting the faces on. They said you shouldn't have done that. Well, look, this is unpleasant. I mean, we understand that, but we have to deal with the reality of the situation. Okay, last question.
You mentioned that the state, Frankfurt, did not provide the tools that cities needed to respond to this properly. What sort of tools should you have received from the state level?
Yeah, the biggest kind of beef I've got with Frankfurt, and first I want to say addressing the pension challenge is absolutely the right thing to do. Okay, but we should be able to do 2 things at one time. Address the pension challenge and provide revenue options to be able to do that. The fact that we only have one option to deal with this is really a sad state of affairs, especially when you compare it to competitor cities that we have. So, for instance, we should have the ability, like many of the 4th and 5th class cities in this state, to have a restaurant tax. We don't have that. We should have the ability to have a local option sales tax, like 80% of the cities around the country already have, that we've been working for in Frankfurt for over 5 years, basic issues like that. We should have proportional representation on the Kentucky Employee Retirement System Board. We have 2/3 of the money, the county employee retirement system that we're in. 2/3 of the money is in the total state pension system, but only 1/3 of the representation. So there are numerous things that Frankfurt can do to make sure that representation is proportional and that cities have revenue options that they can put in front of their citizens so that our citizens can make the best choices that we need to make. And these are issues we've been working with on Frankfurt for quite some time, but no action.
Do you care to comment directly to Governor Bevin's letter to you today?
It was ill-informed and political. We agree we have a problem on budgets, and let's stop the playtime and stop the distractions and get to work on the problem. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming out. I must say I'm very proud of our city at this moment. We've never had a turnout like this. This shows how much, and I knew it, but you got to show up. It shows how much the people of Louisville care about our city. So God bless you all. Let's get to work here over the next 5 weeks. Thank you.